Good evening, I'm Bevan, Dufty.
Woo!
Thank you.
It's better if you come
You like it
here
there?
so that
Okay.
people in the back can see you.
Great, sorry. Good evening, I'm Bevan. I'm happily running for mayor, having a great time doing all the things you do running for mayor. I ran the city's complaint department. I was director of neighborhood services for 5.5 years. Before that, I worked for Susan Leal, who was the first Latina ever to serve on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. And then I ran in my own right in 2002 and served for 8 years. I love this city, and frankly, for me, having had the ground level experience of making the city work for people is something I want to bring to Room 200. And I'm very excited to be in the mission, in the greater mission, because I think that this is a neighborhood and a commercial area of tremendous opportunity. If you look at it, the most recent census numbers show us that we've grown from 11% to more than 15% in terms of our Latino population. And I think that that's an opportunity to rebuild the middle class that we've really lost in San Francisco. So I'm excited to be here to talk about the issues on your mind and to join our great fellow candidates. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Chiu, and it's wonderful to be here in the mission. I have spent a lot of time here in the mission, and I'm not just talking about the time I may have spent at some of the amazing restaurants, bars, and clubs here. When I served as a criminal prosecutor, I worked with many folks here in the mission to fight crime. I spent some time as a civil rights attorney, working with day laborers and recent immigrants to make sure that they were not discriminated against. I want to thank all of you who are part of the Mission Merchants, who are moving forward our local economy. For 8 years, I helped to run a small business, and I know how difficult it is, all the things that you do. Several years ago, in 2008, I decided to run for the Board of Supervisors, because at that time, we had quite a bit of dysfunction at City Hall. And I'm very proud that 3 years later, as the president of your Board of Supervisors, the tone at City Hall has really changed. We are balancing our budgets on time. We are reining in pension costs. We are winning the America's Cup. We are bringing folks together to get things done, and that's the type of leadership that I want to help move forward. There are a lot of things we're going to talk about tonight, but from my perspective, I think what the next mayor needs to do is first and foremost to make sure that we are building a vibrant 21st century economy here in San Francisco, and in particular here in the Mission. And I, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, have legislated cutting dozens of fees that have been nickeling and diming small businesses. I've also helped to drive business tax reform because I think that is something that we need. I also think that city government, we need to be fixing many, many things that are broken, whether it be muning, whether it be schools, whether it be making sure that we are not evicting tenants, that we're not seeing homeowners foreclosed upon. And I look forward this afternoon to having a conversation with all the many things that we are hopefully going to work on together to move our great city forward. Thank you very much.
Dennis?
Hi, I'm Dennis Herrera, City Attorney of the City and County of San Francisco. And I want to thank you for inviting all of us to have a conversation with you here in the Mission about what is at stake in this election. And you heard a little bit, Bevan said, we've seen an increase in the Latino population from 11% to 15%. You heard David Chiu talk about wanting to create an economy for the 21st century. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming out and have a conversation with us tonight, because people say it's early in this mayor's race, and quite frankly, it's really not that early. Only 120 days to determining who's going to be the next CEO of the City and County of San Francisco. And what is at stake in this election is really quite simple. It is about what role government is going to play in all of our lives to help us attack and address our most basic needs. Because when we're talking about muting, when we're talking about pension reform, when we're talking about rewarding entrepreneurship and creativity, we are talking about what role San Francisco local government is going to play in terms of demanding accountability, rewarding opportunity, and demonstrating that we can have a city that works irrespective of political ideology. Because we know that there are challenging times, internationally, domestically, economically, politically, and we see the federal and state government sloughing off more and more responsibilities. But who is going to step up and have to shoulder those burdens and those responsibilities? It's those of us in local government. It's those of us in the local community. And I don't think that there is a neighborhood more attuned to the challenges and what happens when you have both challenges and opportunities than folks right here in the Mission. When you see what is happening in terms of growth of small business and the way that the demographics have changed in the Mission over the course of the last 25 years. So it's my honor to be here with you tonight to have a conversation with you about what is at stake in this election. And I look forward to hearing your questions and laying out my vision about how we can make San Francisco be a model for what a 21st century American city needs to be and should be. Thanks very much.
Good evening, my name is John Avalos, and I'm running for mayor of San Francisco. I currently serve on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, representing District 11, which is the Excelsior District, the Crocker Amazon neighborhood and Lakeview neighborhood. I'm raising 2 kids in public school. My wife, who I live with my kids, is a public school teacher. We are a family invested in staying in San Francisco. We know so many families who are trying to make a go of staying here in this city, and we need to make sure that our city can provide the great opportunities that we know a lot of us in this room have had to be able to have a career or to start a business in this town. And I want to be part of that process. And as your mayor, I want to create more opportunities for small businesses. As supervisor, I've already been doing a lot of work in my district to make sure we can shore up our commercial corridor and keep it clean and keep it safe. I want to make sure that we have sustainable communities for our future. I want to look at our education system, how we can have an education system that works from preschool through college. I want to build more affordable housing and support single-family homeowners and making sure they can stay here in San Francisco. We can keep our wealth here in this beautiful city and make sure we can maintain San Francisco's great diversity. And I'm really concerned about how we can make City Hall the best it can be. I believe that there are still many entrenched interests at City Hall that determine how neighborhoods are served by this city. And I come from a neighborhood that is not very well served. There are neighborhoods like the Excelsior, Bayview Hunters Point, Visitation Valley, the Sunset, that do not have their fair share of resources and services. And I believe a mayor who represents our interests from the southern part of San Francisco with a citywide perspective like I have had, balancing the budget and working on cutting-edge legislation, can make a huge difference in how we can have equity for all of us in this city. And I want to be your mayor to make that happen. Thank you very much.
I want to talk a little bit about who I am and where I came from, just to introduce myself to many of you. I came to this city and this country when I was 3 years old. My mother and my sister and I lived in a one-room apartment in San Francisco, Chinatown. And that was sort of my life experience as a young boy growing up in San Francisco. Growing up in Chinatown was a difficult process for all of us, because it was a self-contained community. You just couldn't go outside of Chinatown if you didn't know how to speak in a language other than Chinese. But nevertheless, we made a life for ourselves in Chinatown. Went to the public schools there, Commodore Stockton, then went to Francisco Junior High School, then went to Galileo, and then moved out to the Mission. My formative years, I grew up here in the Mission, graduated from Mission High School. And back in those days, it was a vibrant community out here. There were families, there were kids, there's all kinds of individuals. The Mission, the corridor, was a vital economic boon for all of us in San Francisco. You could get everything that you wanted here along the Mission corridor. You get your shoes there, you get your food there, your restaurants, your newspapers, fabrics, whatever you wanted, you could get it here in the Mission. And what saddens me now is that so many families have to leave San Francisco. They have to leave the Mission. Our public education needs to be fixed. When you look at some of the most recent reports, a lot of our failing schools are here in the Mission, and that's just not acceptable. Over the years, we have moved out a lot of housing, and we have replaced that with live-work development that clearly are not appropriate for a lot of our families. And so families have left this Mission area. And with that, a lot of jobs have also left. And so my interest is to find ways to make sure that our children can succeed in our public schools, that there are jobs here for us, that the middle class can in fact grow their family, grow a business, and prosper here in San Francisco. And then finally, we've got to make sure that in the Mission area, that our infrastructure is there. I mean, if you go and take our public transit, take our public transportation system, 14 Mission, whatever the bus may be, it's just a horrible experience. People get jacked up. You can't put your kids there, you can't put your parents there and assure that they're not going to get their iPad or phones or purses snatched away and brutalized and so on. So we've got to fix our infrastructure, and we fix our public system here in the Mission. And those are the things that I want to do. Not sexy things, not exciting things, but really things that are important for all of us to live here in San Francisco and in the Mission. That's what I want to do, and we will continue, I think, like Dennis said, this conversation as to how we're going to make it all work for us finally, so that we have no more excuses. Finally, all of us are going to be able to live in the Mission and live in it well. Thank you.